हमारे बीच में एक ऐसे अधिकारी मौजूद हैं जो भारतीय विदेश सेवा के अधिकारी रहे हैं। वे कुवैत में एम्बेसडर रहे, यूएन मिशन में रहे और विभिन्न देशों में उन्होंने अपनी सेवाएं दी है। उनका उस समय के 82 बैच के आप विदेश सेवा के अधिकारी हैं और इस समय वे भारतीय हमारे भगवान महावीर विकलांग सहायता समिति DR मेहता साहब की जो समिति है उसके अध्यक्ष हैं और सारे इंटरनेशनल कार्य वही देखते हैं। अभी इंडिया फॉर ह्यूमैनिटी कार्यक्रम जो माननीय प्रधानमंत्री शुरू किया है उनके तत्वावधान में आपने पूरे देश विदेश में 111 कैंप आयोजित कर दिए हैं और कुल मिला के 43 देशों में ये कैंप आयोजित हो गए हैं। तो आज के कार्यक्रम के विशिष्ट अतिथि के लिए मैं श्री सतीश जी मेहता साहब से निवेदन करता हूं कि कृपया पधारें और अपना स्थान ग्रहण करें। और इस सब के पश्चात आगे की सारी बातें कहने के लिए इस कार्यक्रम के हमारे मुख्य संयोजक श्री नरेंद्र सिंह सिसोदिया साहब जो सबके परिचित हैं, जो हमारे वरिष्ठ अधिकारी हैं, उनसे निवेदन करूंगा कि आउटसेट में सारी बात यहाँ पर आकर के बताएं ताकि सब लोग उसको जान सकें। आदरणीय श्री सिसोदिया सर, आपके बिना तो गुड़ बिना चौथ थोड़ी होती है सर, गणेश जी मैं तो आपका प्रतिनिधि रूप में खड़ा हूँ सर।
धन्यवाद मिश्रा साहब, मुझे तो आप सबका सिर्फ स्वागत ही करना है। विशेष रूप से मैं स्वागत करना चाहूँगा हुड्डा साहब का। He was my teacher in National Police Academy when I was in police service for some months before I moved to Indian Administrative Service. And I remember him very fondly as one of the most outstanding teachers, not only in the academy, but also otherwise, I've been to different universities and elsewhere, but it's rare to get a teacher of his caliber and his dedication. It is especially a privilege to have you here, sir, because जिज्ञासा का जो तात्पर्य है वो है जिज्ञासु लोगों की चर्चा और यू आर अ लाइफ लॉन्ग जिज्ञासु। क्योंकि क्या होता है कि हम लोग सर्विस के बाद फिर और चीज़ों में ध्यान देते हैं, व्हाट्सएप यूनिवर्सिटी को ज्वाइन कर लेते हैं और योगा करते हैं, ये सब चीज़ें करते हैं, लेकिन आपने लाइफ लॉन्ग लर्निंग की and also you are a teacher in American universities, to different universities, despite the fact that initially he had no background in international relations or security issues, but through his own learning he has acquired such tremendous amount of knowledge and expertise that he is now a visiting professor in different universities in the United States. Also, we are most grateful for Sahai Saab, who has kindly agreed to chair this session today. And my special thanks also and gratitude to Ambassador Satish Mehta, who has a vast experience, diplomatic experience. And he was Deputy Chief of Mission in Israel. Then I think the representation was probably in Tel Aviv. Now perhaps they have shifted to Jerusalem. They have not. Yeah. So today's topic, of course, is of great importance. There is a ceasefire, but there are many questions whether this ceasefire will sustain or Netanyahu is simply waiting for Trump to arrive on scene and then unfold his remaining plan of action. So it's a very interesting and important topic because we are also going to be affected if there is a wider conflagration in that area. So I don't have to say anything very much. Welcome to all of you again. Welcome for your support for this activity. And thank you, sir. And we now request you to kindly make your remarks. Then we will also request Ambassador Satish to ask his questions, and if he has any observations. Of course, he was most reluctant, but I am grateful that he has kindly agreed to do so. Thank you. कौन? हाँ, of course. Please kindly.
वहीं से करता हूँ. Mike, take note, please. Hello. Good morning, everybody. जिज्ञासा टॉक की आज की कड़ी के वक्ता श्री R.K. हुडा साहब प्रशासनिक क्षेत्र में एक आप जानी मानी शख्सियत हैं. आपको कौन नहीं जानता, लेकिन फिर भी फॉर्मली इंट्रोड्यूस करने के लिए सिसोदिया साहब ने मेरे को ड्यूटी दी है. R.K. हुडा साहब की एजुकेशन ज़्यादातर इकोनॉमिक्स और पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में हुई है. BA ऑनर्स फ्रॉम पंजाब यूनिवर्सिटी से किया है आपने इकोनॉमिक्स में. इकोनॉमिक्स डिग्री आपने दिल्ली स्कूल ऑफ इकोनॉमिक्स से भी ली है. LLB किया है दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी से. फिर मास्टर इन पब्लिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन फ्रॉम दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी. आपका चयन इंडियन पुलिस सर्विस में 1958 में हुआ और आपको राजस्थान का अलॉट हुआ. आपका एक इलस्ट्रियस कैरियर रहा है जो बहुत कम लोग सिविल सर्विसेज में अचीव कर पाते हैं. शुरुआती दौर में आपकी पोस्टिंग जालौर, पाली, कोटा ज़िलों में बतौर SP रही, जहां पर आपने सराहनीय काम किया. आप उसके बाद राजस्थान, हरियाणा और गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया के कई सीनियर पोस्ट को भी सुशोभित कर चुके हैं. DDP हरियाणा रहे, चेयरमैन एंड मैनेजिंग डायरेक्टर राजस्थान लैंड डेवलपमेंट कॉरपोरेशन पे भी आपने अपनी सेवाएं दी हैं. विभिन्न सीनियर डिप्लोमेटिक पोजीशन पर भी आप पदस्थापित रहे हैं, जैसे हाई कमीशन ऑफ इंडिया इन लंदन, एम्बेसी ऑफ इंडिया एट रोम, हाई कमिश्नर सेशलिस. रिटायरमेंट के बाद भी आप काफ़ी सक्रिय हैं और USA की विभिन्न यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में जियोपॉलिटिक्स और इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस पर आप अपने विचार व्यक्त करते रहे हैं. आप लेक्चर के लिए आपको बुलाया जाता है विजिटिंग प्रोफेसर के रूप में. टुडे ही वुड बी स्पीकिंग ऑन ट्रम्प, Netanyahu and Khamenei, what is in store for the Middle East and international order. So now over to Shri R.K. R.K. Hooda ji. Thank you. Please, sir.
अच्छा ठीक है. First of all, I want to thank the association and for arranging this lecture and giving me the opportunity to speak about Middle East. First of all, Middle East is the British term for this area of what we call West Asia, and the British decided the name for this area from the point of view of distance from London, which was for about 200 years the imperial capital of the British, who ruled the 1/4 of the globe for about 200 years, including India, the United States, Canada, etc. Large part of Africa, Asia. They didn't go to Latin America, but otherwise, and of course they had great influence all over the world. He was the greatest power till the Second World War. Now the Middle East is a big area, sits across 3 continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa. It has 14 independent states, and it has a very ancient and rich history. So what I plan to do is first to speak a bit about the history of the area in terms of the empires which ruled there. Then we will come to the modern times and the present situation between Israel and the Palestinians in particular, but the whole area, the politics of Middle East, I will discuss. Now the area of Middle East, its history goes to thousands of years. There was a state there, Uruk, 6,000 years ago, which expanded. But to come to the more recent, there were 3 empires in this area. So first I speak of the Persian Empire, which lasted for about 1,000 years, not continuously, but a series of dynasties ruled one after the other, even with certain gaps. And there are 3 main dynasties. First was the Achaemenid, which ruled for about 300 years. And then there was the Sasanian Empire, which also ruled about that much. And last was Safavid Empire. Now the Persian Empire had a great cultural, political, and administrative influence over the rest of the area. The Achaemenid, its ideology emphasized the difference between good and bad, so virtue and vice. And then came the Sasanian Empire, which gave the Persian language, Farsi, which it is called. And also, in that time, wherever the administration in Central Asia, even in India and other places, the people from this empire went and worked there. Then came the Safavid Empire, which lasted up to the 18th century. And they controlled a large part of the area, the Iranian empires. They had in their times fought with the Greek city-states, and the Western writers and others termed the Iranian Empire as an authoritarian one, as contrasted with what they called proto-democratic city-states of Greece. But this is a persistent myth. There's no reality to that kind of description. Now the next is the Arab empires. After the time of Prophet Muhammad, who was born in 570 and died in 632, he brought a great new religious plus geopolitical force in the area. Till then, the organization of the Arabia Peninsula was largely based on tribal basis. Various sheikhs, tribal leaders ruled the area, and the job of the tribal leader was to protect the tribe, to protect the animal like camels, goats, sheep, etc., find grazing ground, resolve disputes Although the authority of the Sheikh, as they were called, was rather limited and almost first among equals, but they discharged this task. The other aspect of this was that there was a lot of tribal warfare, and there was no unity at all. And so Muhammad, briefly, his history is this, that he was born in Quraysh tribe, which was an influential one in that area. And he lost his parents, father, mother, and was brought up by his uncle. He used to go once for 1 month in a year to a mountain near Mecca where he lived. And there he used to meditate for 1 month, keeping fast and meditating. During one of those meditation, it is said that Archangel Gabriel, which is also in Christianity, he came and embraced the Prophet and said, recite. Now Muhammad thought poorly of those who recited, because there was a custom there that those guys who recited and told stories used to tell people where one's lost camel is or things of that kind. So Muhammad thought very poorly of those who recited. So he said, I won't. So Gabriel kept on pressing him until he felt almost suffocated. Then he said, yes, I will recite. And this revelation to him would continue for the next 40 years of his life. They started in 610 and will continue till he died in 1632. So he was scared after this experience because he almost felt that he would die, and came back home greatly scared and in a state of fear. His wife Khalida, who was 15 years his senior in age and who had been his employer also, he told her, I am scared, you take me in your lap. She did and reassured him that it was a good thing to happen to him and nothing to worry about. Now, those revelations which kept coming, as I said, were later on, after 50 years of his death, were reduced into the holy scripture of Quran Sharif, as they call it. And his, what is called Sunnah, is his sayings and doings. That is what. And that refers to Sunni Muslims, who are the majority among Muslims. The next is the Shias, next part of the Muslim community. Now, Muhammad, when he started teaching his principles of equality, equal treatment, Mecca was a very unequal society. It was an important city on a trading route, and people came from different parts of Saudi Arabia, and so it was an affluent city with great inequality of distribution of wealth. The rich and poor, there was a great gap. And so when Muhammad started teaching of equality, etc., and also they used to worship 365 idols, whatever they were, and Muhammad wanted to teach them about Allah, that is one God. There are 5 principles of Islam. First is called Shahada. That means there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger or prophet. Then 2 is what is called Salat, it means prayer. 3 is Zakat, which means giving charity. Fourth is Hajj, going to once in lifetime to Mecca to pray. And fifth is what? Huh? What is the fifth? Zakat तो आ गया लेकिन
डोनेशन 10% डोनेशन देते हैं ना
हाँ but शादा सलात जकत हज और हाँ रोजा fasting Ramadan, that is the fifth. And these are the five what are called pillars of Islam, but of course much more than that. Because of his teachings, which went contrary to the Meccan way of living and etc., opposition grew against him to the extent that he felt compelled to leave Mecca with his 70 followers to Medina, another city, about 200 miles away. And there he settled, and there were three communities. Jews were there, Christians were there, and third, he was going as a new Muslim. So he didn't want to, he was a wise person, annoy any of those communities. So where to settle down? So he thought, wherever the camel sits down on arrival there, that is the place I will stay. So wherever the camel came, he built his home and a mosque at that spot. With the mosque is still there. And but the main point is that Muhammad then later he fought battles there, and which he won against heavy odds. So they said that was Allah's grace that facilitated his victory. So in 630, he will come to Mecca with thousands of his followers, and they agreed to receive him. Meccans who were resistant to him, they saw that power was on his side, and he destroyed those idols. And it is written that the first one he destroyed by physical means, by a staff he used to carry, and the rest just by pointing the staff to he destroyed them. Anyway, the point is that he brought this new religion into the Arabian Peninsula and brought about unity of the tribes and a strong faith in God, Allah. So because of that, in his time also, but after his death, the caliphs expanded the Arab Empire. And it will extend to a great area, including Spain, Portugal, and other areas of that is of course Europe, Middle East. And the army was marching into France, and one French general had been anticipating this for a long time and had done a lot of exercises as to how he will deal if the Arab army entered his country. So that general defeated them in that very area where he had been doing exercises. And they turned back. Otherwise, quite possible that whole of Europe might have been under Arab rule. Anyway, the main point is that this new religion of Islam enthused and energized the tribes, who developed a higher loyalty, one to Allah, the God, the other to the unity of Islam. This factor, so Arab army spread out. They conquered Egypt, they conquered Iran, they conquered most of the areas. And then the next empire is the Ottoman Empire, as the Westerns call it. Osman, a tribal leader in Turkey, he founded an empire, and this empire lasted from 1453 to the end of First World War. I think it was, it lost its former areas, but the new ruler of Turkey, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, father of Turkey, he disbanded the old empire but established a Republic of Turkey. So that empire lost the Arab territories, Egypt, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, etc. And that Turkish new government, he made secular, not any religion, adopted the Western alphabet, Roman alphabet as it is called, Georgian calendar. He wanted to modernize Turkey on the pattern of the European countries. That was his aim. And he largely succeeded. But I think more recently, the president who now rules from 2022 till now, 2002, longest ruler now, he almost reversed the process. I mean, he has brought in Islam again. His party is called Justice and Development Party. Earlier, the Turkish military used to intervene whenever they found that secularism was being threatened. And many times there was a military coup there. But this Erdogan has tamed the armed forces also. He dismissed many generals and consolidated his control. I don't know how long further his rule will last, but so far he has been in control. Now, the Ottoman Empire had a pretty good tradition of tolerance for other religions and also accommodating people of minority communities in their administration. But their main weakness was that the emperors, their quality deteriorated. And the last one in 1875, called Hamid, he ruled, and after him, 2-3 other rulers, one committed suicide, another went into depression. Eventually, what is called Young Turks, they took over. And that included Mustafa Kemal also, and 2 others, Anwar and another one. So they modernized Turkey. But I think the present president has reversed quite a lot of that. Now I will just want to tell you about certain important countries of the Middle East before we come to the modern trend. First, Egypt. Egypt is also a very ancient civilization. The pre-Islamic civilization goes back to thousands of years. And for a long time, the pharaohs, they ruled there. It was almost a cult. And they didn't have any military for 1,000 or 2,000 years. And there is a late professor of Oxford University, S.E. Feiner. He has written a history of government in 3 volumes book. I mean, it traces the history of all governments practically of the world. And there he says that when the Egyptian government did not have any army, there were no wars. When it acquired one, wars started coming. And a Colombian professor, a professor of Columbia University, very famous, Charles Tilly, he has written in his book, War Made the State and the State Made War. This is his observation. So the point is that too much of militarization generally leads to war. Just like, for instance, in the United States, they have provided by law that everybody is free and has a constitutional right to carry arms, even non-adults. And you find lots of shooting in schools, elsewhere. So they have it, they use it. This is the problem. Anyway, the Egyptian, after the Islamic, when the Arab government was there, they came to part of the Ottoman Empire, but British took control of it in 1882. And after that, I think continued there till the new government came, was called Free Officers, of which Gamal Abdel Nasser was the main leader. And he was what is called an Arab nationalist. He was not Islamic type. Then Egypt was the main country in terms of the dispute with the Palestinians. Now the introduction of the Jews in Middle East, that brings a great change, and that leads to lot of conflict. The British had control over Palestine, and the Jews in 19th century, I think in 1880s, established a Zionist organization. That means Jewish organization, to seek a home for the Jews, because the Jews were persecuted in most European or wherever they were. And in some places there still are. The reason is that the Jews generally became rich. They were good in business and other things, educated, but they were in a minority and had no political clout, which is the recipe for persecution. And they did not integrate with the rest of the society. So wherever they were persecuted. And of course, Germany did the worst, had 6 million of them killed Hitler during the Second World War, which is called Holocaust. And that is one of the factors that the Israelis, I read an article by a professor in an American university. He says that since 6 million were killed, the Jews now feel entitled to permanent consideration and allowance by the rest of the world for all the time, until eternity. That one-time sacrifice entitles them to this, and that appears to be the case because the Israelis do not accept any criticism of their behavior, actions, or anything. They go on as they feel fit, and this is facilitated by the United States. The United States backs them to the hilt, uncritically, steadfastly, and I think will continue to do so, with the result that there will be no effective check on Israel. And the other powers in the Middle East are too weak and too divided to confront Israel successfully. So it will need an external force, but in the present scenario, that looks difficult. Now, for instance, the whole of the world is against the Gaza war, as well as in Lebanon, wherever they are fighting. And the Security Council passed resolution, the UN passed resolutions. Security Council resolution was vetoed by the United States. Any adverse resolutions are vetoed by the United States. And the point is, why does the United States support them so solidly and so steadily? Reason is this, that the United States consider this area strategically and geopolitically and economically very important. They have military bases in the Middle East, in Qatar, Bahrain, and the British had 80,000 troops in the Suez Canal area, 80,000. And that is said to be the biggest military base of the time. In fact, forever for anyone, 80,000 is a very big number. And that they were compelled to remove largely by under American pressure when the 1956 war was started by the British, French, and the Israelis. Israelis were asked to participate by the British and the French because Nasser had declared that he would nationalize the Suez Canal, in which the majority of shares were held by the British and the French. So they thought of attacking Egypt, or rather the canal area, and they didn't have any easy pretext, so they persuaded the Israelis to start the war, and they occupied Sinai, the area between Palestine and Egypt. And Sinai is adjacent to the Suez Canal. And then they invaded, but the Americans, Eisenhower was the president, former Supreme Allied Commander of the Allied countries, and he was against what he called imperialistic attack on these countries, and he was also of the view that the formal colonial powers should not anymore dominate this region. Therefore, he asked them to withdraw. And they withdrew because they were dependent on the American financial resources. And otherwise also, it was, at that time, a very important power. Of course, they will become more so after the Second World War. But at that time also, it was after the Second War, 1956. So they had become the leading power. And the British were diminishing in their political, military capabilities as well as influence in the world. Now, Egyptian Nasser wanted to play a bigger role in the area. So he established what is called United Arab Republic. In 1958, a union of Egypt and Syria was effected, and then After that comes the, first of all, I'm coming to the Balfour Declaration, coming back to the Zionist movement. There were many people working to promote this cause, return to the biblical times home of the Jews. That is the main argument, that even before Jesus Christ, the Jews had lived there because Moses led them to that place of their ancient. So they were working on it, and they persuaded the British government to help them, promising them that a Jewish state in Middle East will be able to support them to keep the transit to India, which was under their rule, through the Suez Canal and other areas, and that the British agreed, partly because of that and partly because they didn't want any more Jews to come to their country. So both ways the British agreed to help this project of Jews getting into Palestine. So the Balfour Declaration, you must have heard, was issued in 1917, where it was sent to Rothschild, one of the leaders of the Zionist movement, a wealthy man who was helping them also. And the declaration says, His Majesty's government favors the establishment in Palestine of a Jewish home, and that it being clearly understood that there will be no prejudice to the religious and civil rights of non-Jewish communities in the area. That is the Balfour Declaration. And typically of the British, they have almost included contradictory things, in the sense, on the one hand, they are introducing a foreign community with their support. The civil rights is bound to be affected by that. I mean, they are saying this does not, prevent that happening. And that is exactly what happened. So they started sending waves of immigrants into Palestine from the late 19th century till 47. And earlier their number was only 50,000 in Palestine, Jews, which were staying there for a long time along with others. Then it becomes a few 100,000. And now there are, I think, over 6 million Israelis in that area. So these waves came, they bought their land. All of them were wealthy because they came from mostly Europe and other places, and also were educated and experts in many fields. And when they were there, there was a resistance by the Palestinians, and the British tried to suppress it and did so. And at that time they armed and trained the Jews also in helping them, which prepared them for the coming war against the Arabs or Palestinians later on. So the first war was from 47 to 1949. The Arab countries attacked Israel, and the Israelis defeated them. Now the point arises, they were much larger in number, and they were neighboring countries. How come they were defeated? And the scholars and writers of the area, they say they were defeated because most or all of them sent only small expeditionary forces. They were too afraid of a coup in their country if they take a bigger part of the army with them. And secondly, that they were not properly armed or trained. Thirdly, they had no planning, no coordinated intelligence, so they lost. The Israelis defeated comfortably those people. And in 1948, during that period, they declared the state of Israel. And the Americans immediately recognized that state. Harry Truman, the president, was at that time. Now, the next war we talked about here comes in 1956, where also the European powers were asked to withdraw. And also, the British were also asked to withdraw their 80,000 troops from the Suez area, which the Israelis would have preferred to be there as a buffer, but they were asked to remove. The next war is very crucial, 1967. That war, a 6-day war. That is when the Egyptians, Syrians, Jordanians, Arab countries attacked Israel. The Israelis, in the first few hours, destroyed the air force of all these countries. They destroyed their planes in their hangars. And then won the war by occupying West Bank from Jordan, East Jerusalem, which was also under the Jordanian control, and Golan Heights of Syria, which they still control, all those areas. So it was a disastrous thing for the Arabs and the Palestinians. Next war comes in 1973, where a new president in Egypt had taken over, Anwar Sadat, after the death of Nasser in 1970. So he was of the view that the Arabs have lost and that it is necessary to reach some kind of accommodation with Israel, because that is the most important military power in the area. But he thought that he should get some ability to negotiate from a position of at least some advantage. So he made a surprise war against the Israelis in 1973, along with the other powers, Arab powers, and this war ended in a stalemate. And then the negotiations started between them, brokered by the United States. Henry Kissinger was the Secretary of State, and Richard Nixon was the president. And he made a number of trips to help this agreement. And in 1979, an agreement was signed between Egypt and Israel, in which Egypt recognized Israel, and the Israelis agreed to vacate Sinai, but not whole of area immediately, but gradually. And I think by 1982, it was completely vacated. After the 1973 war, the relations continue to be bad between the Israelis and the Palestinians, because the Israelis gave them no civil rights, no economic help. On the other hand, imposed restrictions on them, discriminations, disabilities, under the 2018 Basic Law. They do not have what is called a constitution, but a basic law which governs Israel, which Netanyahu wanted to remove. One provision of that law is that the Supreme Court has a judicial review power whenever it thinks that a particular decision of the executive or the legislative is contrary to the principles of basic law or provisions. And Netanyahu didn't want that. But a full bench Supreme Court, 15 judges met and said that this power will remain with the Supreme Court. Netanyahu had passed a law in the parliament to remove that power, but the judges overruled him. And in this context, I will speak about Netanyahu. He studied in the United States at Harvard, and is an intelligent person, now 75-year-old, has ruled Israel for 17 years at different times. But in his last few years, he has shifted considerably to the right, in the sense that there are what is called ultra-Orthodox Jews who want Israel to occupy or keep control over all the territories that Israel has won in different wars with the Arabs, and who are exempt, or were at least, from military service also. These are ultra-Orthodox. But the Supreme Court said that they must also serve in the Israeli forces. So now they are being recruited, but they were against it. But with their support, Netanyahu is able to remain in power. Before that, there was a Labour Party, which was the main party or the largest party of Israel. They were more accommodated. Nothing much was done, though, even by them. But Netanyahu, now with the alliance of the Orthodox Jews, has been tightening control and also using force more and more against the Palestinians. In 2014, he attacked Gaza. Before that, he had attacked the Palestinian organizers, PLO, both in Lebanon, and from there they were vacated and compelled to move to Tunisia, far off place. And then you know the latest event took place October 7. They were so frustrated and resentful, the people of Gaza, where there is a 2.3 million population of the Palestinians. Actually, the Palestinians were in this area much earlier than anybody else, but they were uprooted under the mandate given by the League of Nations or the United Nations for them to rule over this area. This area, Palestine, was carved out and under the mandate of Britain and France. Britain took control of Palestine and Iraq, and the French took control of Syria and Lebanon. You understand, the mandate was meant to help so-called backward areas and keep them under the guidance of the developed countries, that is Britain and France, so that they will be able to rule independently, because they thought they are too backward and will not be able to work properly in a state of their own. They need supervision and guidance. With the result that those states did become independent, but as long as they were under the mandate, their legacy proved negative for the future, because the French, as is the policy on colonial rulers, made a small minority, Alawites, Shiite, whereas the Sunni population there is 70%, and they were only 17%. They chose them to help them run their government, and they became military and civil elites when the French transferred power to them. So the Syrian unity was injured right from the beginning. But there was a Hafiz al-Assad who ruled for a long time, I think 3 decades. He was an Air Force chief earlier. And you tell me whenever I have to stop and I'll take questions.
I think 10 more minutes.
Okay. So anyway, Syria is suffering from civil war because of disharmony and conflict within and interference of the outsider. Now, the one important point here I want to make is that this area, there are internal difficulties worsened by external interference. All the time, external powers intervene in the Middle East. So Syria and Lebanon, the French gave power to what is called Maronite Christians, who were also a minority. And so the Middle East suffers from a legacy of colonial rule, of divide and rule policy. Also, stunted economic growth and poverty, etc. So the position now is that Israel has become the most important military power in the area. And the global order now is of a kind which is itself deteriorated. Earlier, the United States, after the collapse of the former Soviet Union, was generally able to maintain international order. Now what has happened, the Chinese have developed as a great military, economic, technological power and want to assert their influence in the rest of the world. There is a theory in political science called a transition of power, which is that when an incumbent great power is almost able find that another rival is coming almost equal to it, then there is generally a war between the two. I think that has not so far happened, but it could anytime, in the sense that in my view, the greatest flashpoint in the world today is Taiwan, which Xi Jinping wants to unify. Earlier, the Chinese never said that they will take it by force. Now they say we don't rule out using force. And not only that, they have been holding military exercises in the Taiwanese Straits and flying fighter aircraft in their airspace, etc., to frighten them. So far, they are not so scared, and I don't think they will ever agree to a peaceful union with the mainland Chinese. So that is one spot, and their economic, technological importance of Taiwan for the whole world is important. The semiconductor and other advanced chips they make. And so, in my view, that can be one place. The other aspect of the global order is that the Russians and the Chinese have become friends. Earlier, they were suspicious of each other. They fought a border war in the 60s. But now they say friendship with no limits. That is what they declared in a meeting. See, now Xi Jinping is the greatest dictator Chinese have had. Mao Zedong was a great dictator, but he used to delegate power. This one totally centralized and concentrated powers in his own hands. And there is no check of any kind on Xi Jinping. I was talking of Xi Jinping, and he believes, according to the Marxist philosophy, that the present time, they called historical materialism, is for the socialist forces ascendancy and the decline of the capitalist states. So he thinks that the time has come for China to take much bigger role and assert its position. The problem, of course, is that he has the power, but the Chinese ability to project that power is limited. They have just 2 military bases, Djibouti and now probably in Pakistan, what is called Gwadar. None other. Americans have 700 military bases around the world. They are the only country today who can project their military power to any part of the world in a very short time. Because of these military bases they contain. And they have allies, the NATO. And therefore, no country, at least for the time being, can match American military power. And also they have seen military action, so their forces are ready to fight. Even though lately they have lost some wars. I mean, exit from Afghanistan after 20 years of occupation. And the war in Iraq was a fiasco. But still the power remains. And they do not hesitate to make war. Although one of the specialists in military has written that the United States has lost many wars and they should rethink their strategy. But I think they will never give up using the military for their strategic and other objectives. The Russians and the Chinese have also been saying for a long time that Americans should have no influence in Asian affairs. And they have been telling India, the Russians especially for the last decade, you join us in expelling the Americans from Asia. They also say that the dollar should be replaced by some other currency. But no other currency can do what dollar does, because it has the backing of the American government to pay for the dollar. Other countries' own economies are weak, so who will take a Chinese currency or a Russian one or dollar? Everybody will. And also it facilitates trade, because most of the international trade is done in dollars. Now I come to the last thing, the 3 leaders you talked of. First, Trump. Trump is what is called broadly a nationalist populist leader. Populist leaders are those who exploit real or imaginary grievances of the people. And what does Trump exploit? Immigration. That too many people have come. And how he tells they are criminals, they are mentally deranged, they bring diseases, they take away American jobs, etc., etc. I paint them in the worst colors one can. The other thing what he says is that globalization harmed the Americans. It also took away their jobs, because many factories were shifted to places with cheaper labor available, like China. Third thing he says is that the rest of the world is fleecing the United States, that NATO countries do not pay enough money for the maintenance of the alliance and the armed forces, we carry a huge burden. So he says, I will stop that. Then the other thing he says is that the other rulers, elite of the opposition party, according to him, do not understand and represent the general people. That is what it says. That the real representative is he and his party. Now the populist leaders nowhere in the world have a coherent ideology, nor does he have. And none of them has ever belonged to a mainstream party. Trump was a businessman and became the nominee of the party. He joined it last time, just before the election, and gained full control over it. And now he has the party under his thumb completely. And he has won the elections not only for the presidency, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. That is, he can be most powerful president, but there will be no check on him. The check on any leader's powers are the following: legislative oversight, his own party in control, they do what he tells. Media control, independent media. Third, judiciary as a control. Judiciary also, he has nominated what is called conservative judges, and many of the judgments they have given are of that type. And next is civil society, consisting of NGOs, universities, NGOs, etc. And none of them are effective. So if when Trump takes over power on January 20, 2025, there will be no controls over him. In his last term, he wanted to use the army for pushing out illegal immigrants. The army refused to do it. They said, it is not our job. And he has had no experience of administration. He built Trump Towers and golf courses. And even his business practices were not too good. Many of them he has been indicted for violating the thing. So he is unpredictable. His policy is transactional, as they say. But one thing is sure, his support to Israel will be much stronger than of the earlier presidents. While American presidents support Israel, following reasons. One, this religious belief that there will be second coming of Jesus when the land is in the hands of the Jewish people or people of that area. So the what is called evangelicals, Christians in the United States help and support Israeli cause. Two, that Israel is a reliable ally in the Middle East who will be helpful to them, and that the Arabs have proved not very credible and not very effective. That is the thinking. Then also in 3 states of America, like New York, Pennsylvania, and another one, the Jews have a concentrated population which makes a difference to the presidential elections. If they do not support, it is difficult for any president to become a president. And in the last year of one's presidency, no American president has ever opposed Israel. In fact, they never do. And even if they try to influence the Israeli leader, especially Netanyahu, doesn't care at all. He says that Israelis are the ones to decide Israeli policy, not outsiders. From that point of view, the combination of Trump and Netanyahu would not be in the interest of the weaker states in the Middle East. Now I will come to Netanyahu. I have spoken about the Iranian leader, Khamenei. He has been ruling Iran for the last 35 years, very long period. And he is what is called the supreme leader. That means he can veto any president or any other power whenever he likes. It is a theocracy. The ayatollahs or the clerics, as they are called, they rule over Iran. The rule has not gone too well with the public, and there have been periodical protests on a wide scale. But there is no other party or political force which can replace the Iranian clergy. And why they prevailed in the long run? Because the Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, who ruled from 1941 to 1969, then 79, when he was overthrown by the Islamic Revolution. He was a complete dictator, and he was fully supported by the United States. They gave him latest arms, this, that. And he was a modernist. He spoke more of the pre-Islamic values of Iran than of Islam. And but his administration was corrupt, dictatorial, his intelligence services, and the wealth was distributed among the top 22 families, royal and their associates. Therefore, there was a huge resentment against them. And who carried on the revolution were these clerics. And one of them, the first Khamenei, Ruhollah Khamenei, he fled to Paris to escape this thing, and used audios and all. And they worked because they have independent resources of this, independent of the state. They have huge assets, land and all, the Shia mosques and other establishments. Therefore, their ability to oppose the Shah was very much so there. And the resentment of the general people because of the misrule, corruption and all. So the revolution came, and an American professor has written, "Turban for the crown, the Islamic Revolution." So the Iranians are an important country. They believe they are an enemy of Israel. They say Israel should be destroyed. And they are anti-Western, and especially against the United States, because they said they helped and built up the Shah, and they were spreading Western values in Iran. So they also generally the Arabs and Iranians don't get on. Iranians are Shia, they are non-Arab, and so the main rival there in local terms is Saudi Arabia. So when the revolution came, they started criticizing Saudi Arabia that it is an autocracy, a corrupt monarchy, etc. And with the result that some people took over the Mecca shrine, the holiest. I think you would know about that. Some a group of Saudi Arabians. Are you aware of that incident or no? In the early 80s, or rather in 79 itself, they took over the mosque and said that the Saudi government is incapable of protecting even the holiest shrine of Islam. Anyway, the constant in Yemen, Saudi Arabia supports the Yemeni people, Iranians support the Shia Houthis. They are against each other all the time, and Iran, of course, is against Israel. So the prospects of improvement and stability in economic progress and harmony in Middle East do not look too good to me. Unless there is a radical change in the global situation. That means if the United States, which was the dominant power in the Middle East in the 90s and up to 2010, and then they withdrew after their Iraqi war and other, so they lost. They still want to influence, but they have withdrawn. They do not care that much now as they used to before. And no alternative power has filled that vacuum. So with that, I'll stop and invite questions, if any.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. After the very knowledgeable and very informative talk by Shri R.K. Hooda, sir, and I request the special guest of this event, specially invited for this purpose, Shri Satish Ji Mehta, even ambassador to Kuwait and all that, because Indian Foreign Service officer and Israel expert also. So special comments by you, sir.
He had said that he said he must offer his especially
पहले आप जैसा कह रहे हैं प्रश्न
question answer में he will
क्वेश्चन आंसर के लिए कितना समय बीता था? 15 मिनट कितना?
पहले प्रश्न
हाँ नहीं क्वेश्चन आंसर कितना समय रहेगा? 15-20 मिनट ज़्यादा?
10 मिनट का समय है तो प्रश्न होंगे आंसर जल्दी से आएंगे
Hooda has very well sort of spoken about the entire history and the rise of these people. Autocrat, all of them are autocrats, all of them are. Little louder,
Mic go again.
Yeah. These skirmishes between these countries have been taking place for a long time. What led to the rise of Hamas and Hezbollah? There must be some reason why these terrorist groups came up in these countries, although they were always fighting each other, and I'm unable to understand. And what they seem to be playing the most important role today. It's not these countries. And then the recent blast of iMobiles and other things by Israeli Mossad was no less a terrorist attack than what Hezbollah or Hamas had done. Please throw some light on that. Thank you.
So I will.
और क्वेश्चन कर
Sir, do Palestinians have any future in their own land? The way they have been treated by Netanyahu, I think he is Hitler of our period. He is committing atrocities, or I would say genocide. The way, Jews were treated in Europe for millennium, same way I think he is giving back to innocent Palestinians, especially because they are all helpless. What Hamas would have done, naturally, they are not responsible. Women and children are not responsible. So, what is the future of Palestinians in their own land? Thank you, sir.
I'm not getting questions here.
सर हमने बचपन में इंदिरा और फिलिस्तीन यासर अराफात का जो मूवमेंट था इंडिया में वो काफी फ्रीक्वेंट था एंड इंडियंस मोस्ट ऑफ द इंडियंस वर सपोर्टिंग फिलिस्तीन्स इन स्पाइट ऑफ इजराइल बट आफ्टर मोदी गवर्नमेंट वी फील दैट वी आर मोर नियर टू इजराइल एंड यूएस in spite of Iran and Russia. So what do you think the kind of action when Modi went to America and say Trump is going to be the winner, and so it will affect the whole Indian foreign policy?
So first I'll take up these questions, otherwise I'll forget which is which. Yeah. Now the question about Hamas and Hezbollah, which you took, and the point is that the Palestinians are in the worst possible situation. And they have no home, they have been expelled from where they lived. They live under Israeli occupation, and the so-called Palestinian Authority has no powers of any kind to run whatever little administration they have. Money is given by the Israelis. Water is provided by the Israelis. And Israelis maintain checkposts and walls and other restrictions on their movement. And they time to time raid and punish them. One of the defense ministers said, use force, use power, and beat them up. The point that surprises me rather is that a community which has suffered so much under the rule of Hitler in Germany, 6 million killed, should be so cruel and so disregarding of human values, rights, etc. That is really amazing. And so why Hamas does it? Hezbollah, the brief answer is they are deeply frustrated, resentful, and there is no external support to them anymore. You know what has really damaged them most? The 9/11 terrorist attack on the United States. After that, President Bush said that we will fight all kinds of terrorism, whether of any kind. And since non-state actors, when they take action, are called terrorists, so they were included. The Palestinian support for Palestinians has eroded after that September 11, 2001 attack in the United States. There were 4 aircraft, and 15 of them were from Saudi Arabia, whose escape back to Saudi Arabia was arranged by their ambassador in Washington. He had so much influence with the administration. And the point is that they have no other recourse except to protest. At this time, the Hamas used thousands of rockets to break through the impediments in their way to enter Israel, because they have built walls, watchtowers, and so many other obstructions. And then after they fanned out into Israel and killed about 1,200 people and took 200 hostages. And the Israelis reacted by letting hell loose on them. Aircraft attacks, tanks, declared everything as a terrorist shelter. A hospital that they were taking shelter. Schools, anything, even school, they have been going after them like anything. And I am so unhappy that the international global order is looking at helplessly at what is going on. You know, I recollect that when there was the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, it was a serious matter. The Russians or the Soviets had placed missiles in Cuba, which could be used against the United States. And John Kennedy was the president, so he was advised that we should take out the missiles by bombing them. He resisted the idea. He said, they are also have nuclear weapons, so have we. I do not want to go into this. So it was decided to do a naval blockade. And the one who facilitated the communication was U Thant, the Secretary General of the United Nations. He went back and forth, Moscow and there, and therefore the crisis was avoided. And John Kennedy, about the use of nuclear power, has said that one should take care that should not ever get an enemy into a situation where the choice is either humiliating retreat or use of nuclear weapons. That is the advice he has given for political leaders. So the point is that the Palestinians are really helpless. The Arabs used to be supporting them, that too more of rhetoric than real aid. Now nobody is for them, none at all. So they do whatever can they do on their own and don't achieve much.
India's policy is
Just to answer the two questions, in addition to what you mentioned, both Hamas and Hezbollah came into being in the 80s, early 80s. Very interestingly, Hamas is a Sunni Muslim group, and it has support from Iran. It was born out of Muslim Brotherhood, the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, but it is now receiving support from Iran. Hezbollah is a very Shia group, and it's coming, it again was a liberation movement, but mirrored on what Khamenei did in Iran. So they wanted to mirror it, and then they, of course, received, because they were Shias and they were fighting Israel, they received support from Iran. That support continues, including after the peace deal that has been brokered. We don't know how long it will last, but this is how it is. See, in 2006, I think it was 2005, when I was in Israel, 2005, Sharon decided to vacate Gaza. Until then, Israelis were inside Gaza. In 2005, they walked out of Gaza. And Gaza was left to Palestinians to sort out. And West Bank was also left to Palestinians to sort out. So in 2007 or so, there were elections. And in the elections, Hamas won the elections in Gaza, and they have controlled Gaza since that completely. And PL, Yasser Arafat's Al-Fatah group, they won the elections in West Bank. So while they are both Palestinian territories, they don't have much in common in terms of governance and where the broader system is from. The second question of how long it will continue, that's an open-ended question nobody can answer. At least I can't, and we can only do crystal gazing. But see the facts of the territory, and that's important to understand. There are 2.3 million, as you mentioned, 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza, in an area which is about 365 kilometers. It is the densest populated area in the world. On the West Bank side, the area is about 5,600. I'm not excluding the area which Israel is now occupied, 5,600 kilometers, with over 3 million Palestinians. So you have 5.6 million Palestinians in Palestine, not a state, but whatever Palestinian territories. You have 2.5 million Palestinians in Jordan, and hence Jordan's fears that someday Jordan might become Palestine. They are deeply afraid of this. That if Israelis occupy whatever they have to occupy, then perhaps Jordan might end up becoming Palestinians. In addition, there are about 500,000 Palestinians each in Syria and in Lebanon. So, against about 7 million Jews. The total population of Israel would be about 9+ million, of which about 7 million are Jews. 10 million. 7 million are Jews, 2 million are Arabs in Israel. And about a little less than a million, including Druze and others, which you can count. So it's not easy for 7 million people to control in this manner about 7 million people who are Palestinians. It's not something which is sustainable for a very long time. It will happen. 700,000 British controlled India. Just 700,000 control us. That's okay. But it's not something which is for long term sustainable. eventually something will have to give way. And that's pretty clear. On the Trump side, you see, he's a maverick, as you mentioned, and all of us figured out. But there's some method to his madness. And look at the impact. The Israeli Strategic Affairs Minister, he went to Mar-a-Lago, and on 11th of this month, and Trump told him that he wants peace. And in Lebanon, you have peace on 12th. 12th, eventually Blinken meets them, and then things are sorted out. Uneasy peace, at least peace, some peace, at least something to move forward to. So, and Trump, basically, he prefer peace in this area also, because he doesn't want US military engagements. He has seen the disasters of US military engagements. 3 major examples: Vietnam, more recently Iraq, and latest is Afghanistan. And US won none of that. None of the major wars they won. Actually, they have not won any major war after the Second World War. And you know, that's snapping Grenada, or that's very easily done. They can cause a lot of havoc, no doubt about it. They can cause a lot of damage, no doubt about it. But they actually can't go and win a war. They have not won a war since Second World War. Hot war. Cold wars, yes. Because they have smarts, they have resources, they know how to mobilize. But they have not won a single war. So, and it's not that the Palestinians don't understand it, or others don't understand it. So, I'm a little sanguine about it. Let's see how it pans out. And let's see how long Netanyahu can continue. Because there's enormous disquiet, from whatever I hear from my friends in Israel and elsewhere. There's enormous disquiet against Netanyahu now, because of his own corruption and known court cases. But more importantly, about the failure of October 7. And the kind of, in a way, the kind of ill will he has caused among a lot of countries. If you look at the European countries now, and they are openly speaking against. Saudi Prince, and is another important player there. And when the initial, after 7th October and the Israeli response to it, he simply said, they have to sort it out, it's not my business. I'm focusing on Saudi Arabia. Look at the statement about 15 days back to two-state solution. I mean, it's completely the old Saudi position. So it's a work in progress. It's been there for 50 years now, 70 years now, perhaps more. But this is not a situation which can continue for very long like this. That's only where some. Which basically means what?
I just read an article Abhimanyu sent me of Talmiz Ahmad, our ambassador in Middle East for a long time, including Saudi Arabia, Oman, etc. And he's a real expert on the area. This article was written in the Frontier on October 30, so just a few weeks earlier. Now, one of the points he makes is that Netanyahu has no strategy in what he is doing. Now, I am afraid I am not an expert on Middle East, but my feeling is his strategy is very clear. He wants to deprive the Palestinians of the land as well as the population, so that the question of a Palestinian state does not arise. A state, briefly in political science, the concept has the following components. One, physical base, which means population and defined territory. Two, the idea of a state, whether a religion, which the Israeli is and the Iranian is, or a political ideology like the Chinese have the Marxist, Leninist ideology, or any other ideology. Third is the institutions, legislative, executive, judiciary, and a bureaucracy, army, etc. So these are the parts of a state. So if you remove the physical base, where is the state? So what he's trying to do, I mean, my think is, I can't be sure, but the way he's killing them, the way he's destroying hospitals, schools, Gaza has become uninhabitable. Nobody can live there. And in the modern world with such communication and everything, nobody seems to care much to really help these people who are suffering. Not at all. So that reflects very badly on the present global order.
अध्यक्षीय उद्बोधन के लिए
I will not take the risk of summarizing all the talks which he has rendered. आपकी टॉक बहुत ही इंफॉर्मेटिव और इंटरेस्टिंग रही और आपने भी अपना जो उद्बोधन दिया वो भी इंटरेस्टिंग था, तो मेरे ख्याल से अब ज़्यादा कहने की जरूरत नहीं है और हम इसको यहीं समाप्त करें तो बेहतर होगा। थैंक यू।